All right, panelists, we are now live on Zoom and you can switch your cameras on. Hello, hello to everyone at home. Hello, hi. You're at Silencing Palestine in the Education System. We're just starting up, letting people join. Hello to our panelists. We're just getting started. I'm just gonna let the numbers stabilize before we begin. It's great to see you all. Hello, hello. Hi, everyone at home. Okay, so I think we can go ahead and start. So as I said, this is Silencing Palestine in the Education System. I'd like to welcome Nurit, Samira, Michelle, and Kathy to our webinar. Good afternoon to some of you, good evening to others. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for tuning in. Again, this is Silencing Palestine in the Education System, and we are joined by Dr. Nurit Peled-Elhanan, Dr. Samira Alayan, Michelle Weinroth, and Kathy Kops. My name is Bianca Mageni, and I'm with the Canadian Foreign Policy Institute, the host and co-organizer of today's event. And we're organizing this alongside Just Peace Advocates. And we're very pleased to bring together this panel as part of our support for the International Day of Solidarity for the People of Palestine on November 29th. We also want to thank our co-sponsors, the Canada-Palestine Association, Palestinian and Jewish Unity, Palestine House, the Palestinian Canadian Community Center. So right now I'm actually in Uganda. We're just an hour actually difference from Palestine time. I'm in Kampala. The Institute is based in Montreal or Jojage on the territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka people and the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the keepers of the Eastern Door of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. And you can find out more about our work at foreignpolicy.ca. And CFPI is an organization that challenges unjust foreign policy measures. You can also find out about Just Peace Advocates at justpeaceadvocates.ca. So again, thank you so much for joining us. After introductions, our speakers will give the remarks, and then we'll take about half an hour for questions from the audience following that. So please do put your questions in the Q&A. It's much easier for us to find them there. So again, for those of you who are just joining, and I see there are more people that are still coming through, and for those of you on Facebook, today's event is called Silencing Palestine in the Education System. And in Canada, there's a fairly outrageous development where in London, the school board recently listed a shirt that said, open quote, "Free Palestine" as a political slogan that promotes or incites violence. But after pressure from community members and the group Canadians for Justice and Peace in the Middle East, they did apologize for that. Incredibly, however, this is not a total anomaly, as we will soon hear more about. In the springtime, students in Ottawa protested after schools would not allow a Palestinian flag and other cultural symbols. If there is a silver lining to these awful measures, it's that this partly reflects the growth of schools as a flashpoint of Palestine solidarity. Moves to stifle this emerging solidarity include the anti-Palestinian IHRA, or International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, definition and illustrative examples of anti-Semitism, which conflate criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism. The other side to this event has to do with Canadian funding of Palestinian schools. The anti-Palestinian lobby regularly criticizes Canadian funding for Palestinian refugees schooling through the UNRWA, which is the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East. So this webinar will also be looking at how the narrative in education is used to silence and discriminate against the Indigenous Palestine population, both in historic Palestine, but also the diaspora here in Canada. And so with that, it's my great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Nurit Peled-Elhanan. Welcome, Nurit.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Yes, yeah, great.
Can I share the screen?
Yes, you can.
Sure, okay, so I'll share my screen. I'll speak with the PowerPoint. Okay, do you see that?
Perfect.
Yes. All right. So this is the title of the book I published about 10 years ago, where I studied school books until 2009, but I will speak about current school books as well. But first, I would like, with your permission, really, to dedicate this webinar to the Palestinian children who were killed this year by the Israeli army. This picture gives about half of them. And the question that I asked myself when I started this, my study was, how do you educate children to kill other children? Or how do the oppressed educate their children? Because the people who kill these children are our children. Our children who at the age of 18 become soldiers and pilots and very quickly murderers. How do you educate children to become these people that you see here in this photo? Killing a child and then taking photo. And school books are only part of the answer. But I studied school books, I study other things as well, classroom discourse and racism in schools and so on. Today I will concentrate on the school books. So first let's define Israel. Israel publicizes itself as a democracy and the world is very happy to accept it for their own reasons. But the truth is that Israel is an ethnocracy where one ethnic group dominates all other ethnic groups. And Israeli school books are meant to. Do you see the whole slide? Because I don't.
Yeah, I do. I see it.
You see the title also?
Yeah, I can see everything.
Okay, fine. The function of school books is really to give a version of reality, and this is all over the world, that will enable students to live with the past and to look for the future in their countries and accept what is called the founding crimes of their country. So Israeli school books are meant to legitimate the Zionist project of conquest and settlement to both Jewish and Palestinian Arab students who are of Israeli citizenship. I studied about 30 books of history, geography, and civic studies. And in Israel, school books production is a private industry, but all the books have to be authorized by the Ministry of Education, and therefore they must have the same ideological background based on Zionism, and they must have some basic assumptions which are not given to discussion. For example, Jewish historical rights on the land, the whole land of Israel and Palestine, anti-Semitism, and value assumptions. What is good and desirable? What is good and desirable is Jewish state, Jewish majority, Israeli control. All this guarantee against another Holocaust. So this is the basic of Israeli education. Now, Israeli education never encouraged peace education. There's never been any program of peace education, although the UN gives a lot of money for schools who do that. And not only wasn't encouraged, but it was really prevented. On the contrary, on the other hand, when you enter Israeli schools, you see all kinds of slogans: love the other, respect differences, and the other is me, which is a huge project of Israeli Ministry of Education. And history curriculum has also set as one of the objectives to promote understanding towards others. And the question is, who are these others? So in Israel, there are two groups of others. They are Jewish or non-Arab others, who are imported into the state by the government, and they are considered others that can be molded and cultivated to suit the ideal of a Jewish Western modern democratic state. Until they are molded and cultivated, they are distanced and marginalized and undergo what we can say symbolic cultural elimination and inner colonialism, because they depend completely on the bureaucracy of the state for housing, for jobs, for children education, everything. I'm talking here about Arab Jews from Muslim countries who were brought to replace the exterminated Jews of Europe, and about Ethiopian Jews who are still brought into the country for the same demographic reasons. The other group is the indigenous Arab Palestinians, who are not candidates and never been candidates for integration and assimilation, because they are treated as a race, namely as a group that never changes. And they undergo symbolic, cultural, and physical elimination. So this is the difference. Here, for example, we see from a geography school book, the conception of others. The title is Jewish versus Arab population. On the upper part, you see Jews and others. You see that? It's in English. On the lower part, you see Arab population. Now, who are the others if they are not the Arabs? Because the Arabs are called the non-Jewish population, the non-Jewish sector. The others are immigrants that were brought from former Soviet Union and are not Jewish. But since they are white, they are accepted in our group, okay, against the Arabs. And they are formally defined as others in the register, but the school book doesn't say that. So the children should assume that they are non-Jews who are not Arabs, so they deserve to belong with us. Now, if you look at the little figurines that represent the populations, you see that in the group of Jews and others, you have two funny-looking people, but there's nothing Jewish about them. They don't have any Jewish object signs. They can be anyone. Whereas for the Arab population, you see the representation by two racist icons of Ali Baba with a camel and his crouching wife. And this is the only representation of Arab citizens in this book. Of course, nobody looks like that, citizens or not, but this is the only representation that you have of Arab citizens. By the way, in all the school books of Israel, even those that teach you about the Arabs and the Arab culture or whatever, you don't see one photograph of an Arab human being like us, modern, professional, etc. Not even one. There was a study last year by an organization called Sikui, and they published it. Now, how do we teach the children to love the other if we only teach them to fear the others? Former chief scientist of the Ministry of Education said we only teach our students that we are victims. So who are the current threatening others? And of what and of whom can we be victims today, according to the textbooks? And this takes us back to the post-Holocaust slogan, never again, because the Arabs and the Palestinians in particular replaced the European anti-Semites as the potential exterminators of the Jewish people. The revenge that Israeli education is promoting and inculcating in the students from a very early age by a very a traumatizing Holocaust education. The revenge is directed towards the Arab Palestinians. So they are the threatening others. And the discourse of never again is never again for us. And it creates a rhetoric of victimhood on one hand and power on the other hand, and justified by the fear of becoming powerless minority again, both physically and culturally, whatever is done to the Palestinians or to the Jewish others in the name of Western culture, because the cultural fear of Israelis ever since Israel was founded was that we should become a part of the Middle East. So Jews from Muslim countries and Jews from Africa have to undergo a civilizing process of re-education so they don't Orientalize and Africanize our so-called Western culture, which is not Western at all, but we have no time for that. So we are victims. We inherited victimhood from the Holocaust. We are victims now. We are potential victims because we have potential exterminators, and we have to protect ourselves physically and culturally against all these others. Now, sociologist Zygmunt Bauman, when he talked about Holocaust and the modernity, analyzes the anti-Semitic propaganda. And I took it because I wanted to see if textbooks in Israel do the same thing, and they do the same thing, unfortunately. So these are his definitions. In Israel, they still believe in what is called social engineering, that you can exclude people, eliminate people, reculture people, and so on and so forth. But how do you convince children of the need to exclude and eliminate others? It takes a very long and deep and thorough process. So first of all, you turn the people into abstraction, okay? When people become abstraction, like a problem or a threat, then he says moral and ethical rules do not interfere with the handling of this category of people. So the Jews were defined as the Jewish problem, and in Israeli textbooks, the Palestinians are defined as the Palestinian problem, refugee problem, developmental problem, demographic problem, security threat. And the problems must be solved. So there are no more people, there are problems. This, for example, is from one textbook. It is called the photograph, The Palestinian Problem. You don't see anything Palestinian about it, right? But they say that this is the way they live in the refugee camps, but you don't see the people. You never see the people. And this problem is poisonous, and it acts by itself independently of human action or cause. Although Israel came victorious out of the survival war that was forced upon her, the Palestinian problem would poison for more than a generation the relationship of Israel with the Arab world and with the international community. This is what the textbook tells you. This is another way to turn them into abstraction. It's an aerial photograph of Jabalia refugee camp. Yesterday, there was a huge fire there and many people died. I don't know if you know about that, only yesterday. And it's one of the most crowded places on earth. But when you see it like that, without people, right? And the caption says, one of the refugee camps in the Gaza region whose inhabitants live in overcrowdedness and poverty, as if nobody is responsible for that. This is a natural situation. Nobody sees these photos, for example. You know that Israel destroyed all the infrastructure in Gaza of electricity and water and sewage and everything, and they don't let or hardly let any any material to reconstruct it. So every winter, this is what Gaza looks like. But this you don't see in textbooks. You see this aerial photograph, which a researcher by the name of Van Leeuwen, who, by the way, studied a Dutch textbook, says it's the angle of the pilot who flies too high to be able to see the people on whom he's dropping the bomb. And this is what is called the objective knowledge that education wants to reproduce. This is another picture where you don't see the people. It's a checkpoint. It's what is called flying checkpoint. One day it's there, one day it's not, but it's empty. It's empty of the people against whom it was erected. You see a few soldiers here drinking coffee. And since it's such an abstraction, you can ask abstract questions of the children. What is the purpose of the checkpoint? How does it represent our defensive democracy? What is administrative detention? And count one advantage and one disadvantage. It's all in the abstract because nobody sees the people who are really subjugated to these measures. Okay, this is a checkpoint, a regular checkpoint every morning when people go to work. But the textbooks don't show you this, they show you this, right? This is a normal morning. And this is administrative detention. This is administrative detention. This girl was arrested when she left school. She stayed 2 weeks in prison, in a military prison, because all Palestinian children are tried and arrested in military court and prisons. And this is what she looked like when she came back. She didn't see a lawyer, she didn't see a social worker, she didn't see her parents. This is how she came out. This is another very sad case. This child stabbed, didn't kill, but stabbed two Israelis in a settlement, and he was lynched. After he was lynched, he was handcuffed to his bed in the hospital, as you see. He was 12. He was brought to trial, to a military court. And today he's a broken man. And all these years, it's about 10 years, he's been in solitary confinement. Haven't seen his parents or a lawyer or a social worker, nothing. And this is what is meant by administrative detention. Another way to abstract people is not to show them. This is a cover of a school book that is called Living Together in Israel. As you see, there are no Arabs here. In fact, no brown people at all, no Ethiopians, nobody. Okay, everybody is white and happy. And the best way is through maps. This is a map of Palestinian population, Arab population. We don't say Palestinian in Israel, we say Arab. And there's not even one Arab city on the map. Nazareth, Akka, nothing. So the feeling is that they live on us and among us, which is the greatest fear of Israelis. And the whole West Bank is colorless. And in the legend, it says an area for which we have no data, the whole West Bank. So probably no people there. And of course, mental maps that tell you that Arab villages do not develop because they're very far from the center and they have remained out of the process of development. And it's so difficult to connect them to electricity and water. Whoever knows anything about Israel knows that Israel is so tiny. Like I don't know, in Canadian terms, the Winnipeg or something, okay? But these are mental maps. Nobody really knows the territory. We know only the maps. And then the third one is, if there are such a problem, we should fence them off, okay? Draw boundaries between us and them. They must be kept outside our areas. We must preserve the national land and protect it from illegal invasion by non-Jewish population. And this non-Jewish population are the citizens of the state. Okay.
Nurit, you have about 2 more minutes.
How much?
About 2 more minutes.
But I started at 8:10.
You can continue.
Okay,
You
we
can
continue.
if you like.
All right. And of course, whatever happens to them, okay, I'll go on. The confinement legitimates the military government and the occupation, of course, because you have to take care of it. And the military government is good for us because it helped Jewish settlement all over the countries and prevented Arab seizure of vacant lands. Of course, vacant lands are the lands that were taken from them. The fact that we have to be a majority legitimate racist discourse, such as the law of citizenship, which does not allow a Palestinian who is a citizen of Israel to marry, or not to marry, to live with his or her partner if the other one is from the territories. So families cannot live together, all right? And if they do live together, of course, they do it against the law. And although the Supreme Court ruled that it is unlawful, the school book tells you human rights are not a recipe for national suicide. All right. And the use of racist discourse is very important because in order to give an image of the colonized as something vile and evil, you have to put some kind of a frightening stereotype. Okay, so this is how they are, Palestinian citizens are, and you have to say that all these negative qualities are in the blood. Traditional and object to changes. They are unwilling to give anything for the general good, and so on and so forth. And then you get used to look at them as a category of people and not as individuals. So these are the stereotypes that we have today in our books. The primitive farmer, you see? The Alibaba with his camel, and this is the caption: the Arabs refuse to live in high buildings and insist on living in land-ridden ones, one-story houses. And as I said before, nobody looks like that in the world. Terrorists. And all this legitimates their killing, okay? So today, books do not even speak about Palestinians. They say we have minorities who have minority rights, that's all. But before, up until 2009 or 10, they did mention the massacres that were perpetrated, but they were always legitimated by the consequences to the Jewish nation. For example, the escape of the Arabs in the Deir Yassin massacre solved a terrifying demographic problem, and even a moderate person such as the first President Weizmann spoke about it as a miracle. So too bad they have to die, but it's good for us. The slaughter of innocent Palestinians brought some confidence to the Israelis, restored the morale and dignity to the army, and so on. And the claim is that positive outcome for us may condone or overlook any evil done to them. And you always have this wonderful heroic photographs, and this poster, for example, that showed the lurking Arab who is waiting for the Jews who come to Israel. And all this, every measure taken against Palestinians protect Israel Jews from another Holocaust. So this demands a Nazification of the Arabs, all right? And in 2020, for the final exam, they had to read a chapter called The Design of Holocaust Remembrance in Israel. And what they said there was that what made Israelis identified with Holocaust victims were Palestinian terror attacks. And all these attacks, of course, are depicted as, you know, out of the blue. Nothing preceded them, nothing can not justify but explain them. They just come out of sheer hatred for Jews and they murder us. And that's what makes us able to identify with the victims of Hitler. Hijacking of Air France, for example, to Entebbe, where there were even German terrorists and they separated the Jews from the others. It takes you straight to Auschwitz, and so on. So I finish. What we see in the books is rhetoric of victimhood and power. Israeli textbooks present Palestinians as both superfluous, vile, lawless barbarians and almighty Nazi predators. And they command the students to forget the other drama, the drama of the victim. The victims have no voice. Nobody knows what happened to the victims. And this creates what is called elite racism, a racism that is inculcated from above, that is we are being educated into this racism. Okay, I think I'll finish here, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Nurit. I'm just gonna stop the screen share. Perfect, thank you. Thank you so much for that enlightening presentation. For our audience members, Nurit's book, Palestine and Israeli Schoolbooks, Ideology and Propaganda in Education, can be found online for purchase. The link to that is in the chat. Karen Rodman from Just Peace Advocates has been putting important links there. And this is a very important resource for understanding the presentation of Palestinians in Israeli education. So I didn't mention earlier, but Nurit is a lecturer at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. She holds a PhD in language education from Hebrew University and is a human rights activist. She received the Sakharov Prize from the European Parliament for Human Rights and Freedom of Speech in 2001. And I do encourage you to find out more about the work that she is doing. I'm looking very forward to hearing more from you in the Q&A. For those of you at home who are wondering, yes, we will be rebroadcasting this discussion to both YouTube and Facebook. I would encourage everyone to subscribe to our YouTube channel to get notifications. Also a reminder that we're going to be having a Q&A at the end, so please do put your questions in the Q&A box. So the next speaker is Samira Alayan. Samira is a senior lecturer and researcher at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. Previously, she was research fellow at the George Eckert Institute for International Textbook Research in Germany. She holds a PhD in sociology of education from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and has published several academic articles and books, including Multiple Alterities, Views of Others in Textbooks of the Middle East, as well as Education in East Jerusalem, Occupation, Political Power, and Struggle. Welcome, Samira.
Hi, thank you for having me today. I will start with like Nurit with the PowerPoint. So I will open my PowerPoint first. Yes. Okay. First of all, I will start to talk about. I want to talk about the group of Palestinians, and which the study today, which group of Palestinians I will talk about. It's important to know there is 4 group of Palestinian that I do study of them, and today I will focus with the Palestinian in the West Bank. And when I talk about West Bank, I have to mention the East Jerusalem because they have the same textbook. So this is the first group of Palestinian. We have the Palestinian 48, it's the citizen of the state of Israel. We have the 1967 Palestinian, which we call them they located in East Jerusalem. And we have the West Bank and Gaza, and we have the refugees. I want to talk about just the history, to give a historical background about okay, just 1 minute. I think I have wrong one. Just 1 minute. This is not the PowerPoint. I need this one. Yes. And okay, this is. I will give a little bit background about the education in Palestine, in West Bank, and Gaza.
Samira? Samira?
Oh, I think Samira's internet has gone down. We'll just wait a few moments to see if it comes back. If not, then we will move on to our next speaker.
No. Wait.
I think we'll be okay. Let's just wait. So as we're waiting, I encourage audience members to check out the links that we have shared in the chat so far. Karen has been sharing those links. Hold on 1 second. I'm just going to check the panelists. Yeah, we have lost Samira. Okay, I think we're going to have to hear from Samira, unfortunately, after the next speaker. But that should be okay because we were quite close to the beginning of her presentation. So I'm going to call on the next speaker that we had lined up. Our next speaker is Michelle Weinroth. Hi, Michelle. Michelle is an academic and an activist from Ottawa. Her scholarly work has focused on key mechanisms of 19th, 20th, and 21st century political propaganda. Her pro-Palestinian activism is an extension of her parents' social justice work, which first took shape in the US around the civil rights movement and later in Israel during the 1950s. Her more recent interventions have involved petitioning Ontario school boards to reject the adoption of the IHRA WDA working definition of anti-Semitism. All right, well, you got to hear Michelle's amazing bio just in time for Samira to return. So Samira, please continue.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Something wrong with the internet, something happened. So, okay, I will continue. So I start to say, I give a little bit background about the education system. So the same Jordanian and Egyptian textbook continue to be used in Palestinian school, but were censored by the Israeli military education commandant. And the Palestinian pupil used textbooks that were produced according to the Jordanian and Egyptian education and philosophy and ideology until they produced their own textbook. It was after Oslo process. After all public education institutes were transferred to the Palestinian in Oslo process, the agreement was that all public education institutions were transferred to the Palestinian National Authority, but the Egyptian and the Jordanian textbook were still used in Palestinian school for some time until the graduate and replacement by the Palestinian in 2000. The Palestinian began to put some of the material about Palestinian textbooks, but they started to produce their own textbook just in 2000. And since 2000, they start to use this textbook in the West Bank, in Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem. And the question, why East Jerusalem? I will mention this after. I will go through And because I want you to see what the Palestinian is studying, the Palestinian textbook since 2000, after the Oslo process until 2017, they produce their own textbook, and they show the purpose of this textbook, the Palestinian National Authority, was to strengthen the Palestinian identity to the people in Palestine. And the second purpose was the textbook not separate between Jewish and Zionist. They present the conflict is with the Zionism movement and the ideology, and not with the with Judaism. So they succeed to show the people that we don't have the conflict with the Jews, but we have the conflict with the Zionism ideology. Textbook include information about Judaism as a religion and a Jew as a religion community, and Zionism movement and Zionism colonialism as a continuation of European colonialism imperialism. No images of racism in Palestinian textbook against Israel or Israeli right to exist, and this is the opposite what Nurit talked and present before me about the Israeli Jew textbooks. Also, the Palestinian textbook does not include any information against Judaism as a religion or as a religion community. They have disagreement with the Zionism thought and the Zionism movement, which does not recognize the right of the Palestinian people to their land, their access as a nation. And there is no stereotype images, as mentioned before Nurit, the Palestinian is primitive and so on. Here, you don't have them. There is no stereotype images of Jews in textbook showing either positive or negative image. Israel as a state, the map in these two textbooks showing the maps. Here it's written Israel, and here is it written Israel, so the Palestinian student can learn.
Is Samira cutting out for others, or is it just me? Okay. All right, we'll just wait again. I get it. I'm also struggling with internet. Let's just be patient. Thinking maybe what I could do actually is, as we're waiting, maybe I can direct one of the questions actually to our panelists, since we have a little bit of time. I think she'll turn up again. So yeah, we have a question that maybe Nurit, you could potentially answer. There's a question here about whether there's a movement within Israel to adjust the education textbooks of Israeli children to more accurately reflect the facts without bias. Oh, I think Samira is back. Hi, Samira, you're on mute. You're on mute. We can see that you're back, but you're still muted.
Yes. My internet today, no way. Okay, so I will continue. I hope everything will be.
Yeah, sometimes it helps to, if it really gets tricky, sometimes it helps to switch your camera off, but maybe just as a last resort.
Yeah. So I will show you two textbooks. This is the old Palestinian text since 2017.
Yeah, it's a really unstable connection. All right, so I'll just continue with that question for Nurit and wait again. But I think if we're unable to connect with Samira, we'll probably have to move on to Michelle shortly.
Bianca,
Yes.
I think that maybe if Samira sends me her presentation and I show it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so she's doing it right now. Because it's a pity that, I mean, this is what it's all about.
Yeah. Another option, I don't know if Samira could hear us, is she could call in. You can phone in. But if she's able to send you the PowerPoint, you could sort of take us through it, fairly quickly. That could be good too.
I think it would be the best thing.
Yeah.
Okay, you want me to answer the question?
Yeah, answer the question. I think after that, I think we should move on to Michelle and Kathy, and then perhaps you'll have the presentation to show towards the end. But I think it's cut out too many times now. I think we should probably move on. And in fact, I think we should just do the question afterwards. I think that's what makes sense at this point. I think I'm just going to call it. So I'm just going to move on to Michelle. Hi, Michelle. I have already read out Michelle's bio, but just for a reminder, Michelle is an academic and an activist from Ottawa. She's a scholar, and she most recently has been involved in petitioning Ontario School Board to reject the adoption of the IHRA working definition of anti-Semitism. Welcome, Michelle. Oh, you're still on mute.
Thanks very much for inviting me.
Oh, you're most welcome.
My contribution rests on three sources of knowledge: my Israeli childhood, my teaching of high school and university students, and my long-standing scholarly pursuit of political rhetoric. I draw on the research, writing, and activism of Paul Salvatore, Jenny Stimac, Judy Deutsch, and Corey Balsam, persons from Independent Jewish Voices, who have directed my attention to some of the egregious assaults on Palestine taking place in Ontario's education system. From Minister of Education Stephen Lecce's unceremonious suppression of Palestinian content in the work of a grade 10 student in 2020, to the brutal excoriation in the press of Desmond Cole for his utterance from the river to the sea during an address to the TDSP, to the tirade by the executive director of the Canadian Anti-Semitism Foundation against trustees of the YRDSB, the York Regional University District School Board, for daring to defer the adoption of the IHRA. They got really punished for that. These are but a few of many salient incidents that reflect a disturbing increase in anti-Palestinian racism, a trend largely, is there a problem?
Oh, no, keep going, please. I think some of the panelists are not on mute.
A trend largely overwhelmed by the stentorian voices of those who declare that anti-Semitism is the gravest of all genocides. With self-assigned exceptionality, the tribunes of this singular victimhood have succeeded in occupying the various platforms of our national media. Meanwhile, the CBC has deleted the word Palestine from its usable lexicon and relegated the word Nakba to the wilderness of historiographic dispute. The mainstream Canadian public, whether young or old, whether inside the classroom or out, gags on the word Palestine or is tutored in gagging discussion of it altogether. In the public sphere, and specifically within Ontario School Board, censorship of the Palestine issue appears increasingly rife. What might be the roots of this intensifying assault on Palestine? Is this McCarthyite suppression the ground on which pro-Israel rhetoric is cultivated? Conversely, are the praises sung to Israel another form of anti-Palestinian racism in disguise? If so, how is such rhetoric exploited for the purpose of shaping policies in Ontario's education system? Policies that are, in spite of their seeming neutrality, veiled anti-Palestinian aggressions in bureaucratic form. These are my defining questions. Contrary to popular wisdom, education is never disinterested. Whether we are speaking about lessons learned in nursery school or in university, education is invariably political. And by political, I mean ideologically inflected, either supporting society's status quo or condemning it in favor of an alternative. Even within the home environment, education is to some degree tendentious. endorsing mainstream political assumptions or pushing for change. From an early age, children are indoctrinated with fictions that alternate between utopian fantasy and horror, between idealized projections of selfhood and hateful visions of a terrifying other. The story of us and them is told from day one. I once heard it said that the lullaby is our first taste of propaganda. We are lulled into submission by our mother's cooing voice. Our second spoonful of mores is doled out in nursery rhymes or catchy songs. My Israeli childhood was awash in these. I think of Hashkedia Porachat, an ode to the blossoming almond tree. This joyful announcement of spring is but one of the potent seeds of Zionist education. Learned at a tender age, and I was just 3 when I first heard it, it was but political preaching in saccharine verse. Hashkedia Porachat was an adulation of Zionist pastoral ideals, exuberantly sung by the innocent settler child who imagined herself as a heroic pioneer making the desert bloom. In 2022, we know that this greenwashing verse was and still is but a lyrical obfuscation of war crimes, the merciless depopulation of Palestinian villages coordinated by the Jewish National Fund under the banner of eco-justice. In times of relative stability pre-1967 and exclusive to Israel's settler elite, no Palestinians had any peace, sweet odes to Zionism formed the nectar of political seduction, the stuff that made patriotic beliefs crystallize into an unbreakable bond of nationhood. But when an ugly reality peered through the nation's self-congratulatory fantasies, the language of terror began to trump those cloying references to a land of milk and honey. The leitmotifs of Zionist speech were increasingly shaped by terror and revenge. Calls for the death of all Arabs spread fast. The Palestinian referred to derisively as a dirty Arab featured as the sinister beast haunting the Zionists' angst-ridden conscience and threatening to consume loved ones or drive them into the sea. Over the past decades, as international protests against Israel's military operations in Gaza and its abhorrent occupation have accrued, this old-school phantasmagoria has been refurbished. Today, it takes the form of the new Auschwitz, the new anti-Semitism, imputed primarily to the pro-Palestine solidarity movement or to left-wing critics of Israel. Featuring in the extracurricular political education administered by synagogues and community centers, this extravagant fiction fuels the engine of the now famous IHRA WDA, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance working definition of anti-Semitism. A document that has swept North America and Europe with evangelical drive, heralding its self-righteous mission to combat anti-Jew hatred, while in fact acting as a penal code to stifle dissent. Aptly referred to as a weaponization of the memory of the Holocaust, it acts as heavy psychological artillery, instilling fear into pro-Palestine advocates. Though not officially a legal document, it threatens to damn critics of Israel with the most disabling slur, a charge of anti-Semitism tantamount to a professional death sentence. See the excellent work of Sharon Estelle and Rowan Godet titled Unveiling the Chilly Climate, which I'm sure is in the chat right now. The IHRA's force, its punitive and intimidating force, reflects a deep-seated insecurity, a fear, most notably among diasporic Zionists, that the once glorious image of Israel has yielded to its darker self. The subtext of this document is thus the expression of a covert moral panic, a terrifying realization that Israel's touted democracy has been erected on falsehoods, and that the walls of ideological deception are poised to collapse. But if that genuine fear is repressed in the subtext, an artificially constructed fear sits manifestly on the surface of the page, where the IHRA's definition lays out 11 pieces of supporting documentation, most of which consist in red herrings focused on Israel's critics rather than on anti-Jew hate. Wrongly anthropomorphizing the state and conflating it with the individual Jew, the IHRA then tacitly presents Israel as the victim of mounting anti-Semitism, an animus deserving maximum punishment. And with this rhetorical sleight of hand, the unspoken fear among Zionists that their beloved state is a counterfeit democracy is then quelled as the IHRA turns their attention away from an inner disquiet to a fabricated existential threat, that is, the approach of a new Auschwitz on the horizon, or in other words, the specter of a Palestine solidarity movement on the march. Seen up close, the IHRA has little to do with gas chambers or Nazism. The examples in the definition are in fact coded signifiers, referring to the threat felt by pro-Israel apologists in the face of an advancing grassroots movement, one that presents a significant challenge to Israel's political system. Indeed, the fear that this regime of privilege will fall takes the form of a horrific revenant from World War II. But this time, that phantom genocide is imputed to the Palestine solidarity movement rather than to white supremacists. Thus, as the grassroots movement for Palestine grows apace, pro-Israel advocates use perverse reasoning to declare that it is anti-Semitism which is on the rise rather than the advance of social justice and anti-racist activism. This cynical or unconscious mistaking of Palestinian liberation for Jewish extermination serves as the IHRA's powerful ideological trick, one that has caught many in the crosshairs of its treacherous logic. It is no surprise then that the IHRA is directed at halls of learning, university administrators, and school boards, for it is in the realm of knowledge production where critical thinking is encouraged, at least in theory, that the power of dissent can surface. But when it comes to Israel's cruel supremacy over Palestinians, the proponents of the IHRA are determined to ban critical thinking, and so they proselytize loudly and insistently, demanding that bureaucracies of the education system act as gatekeepers, armed with the IHRA's quasi-legal power to quash Palestinian speech. This unconscionable suppression of truth is but one flagrant instance of anti-Palestinian racism, and as such, it is no less repugnant and no less hateful than anti-Semitism itself. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for that keen insight for posing such important questions and for all of your activism over the years and for enlightening us all as to how these discourses are impacting public consciousness. We're now rejoined by Dr. Samira Alayan, and I'd like to welcome you back, Samira. Samira, you're still muted.
Okay, sorry again. I'm so sorry about my internet today. We agree with Nurit. We chat together that she will present my PowerPoint and I will talk about it, okay? It's much better because I don't want it to be disconnected again. So Nurit, you can start with the policy of Israel. So I will repeat just a few. My presentation was talking. I don't see Nurit.
I have to be allowed to do share screening.
Ah, you don't?
Like
New
you
share.
are. You started share. You started
Wait.
sharing. Yep.
New share. Now where is it? Wait. Now. Stop. I'll do stop share. Now I'll do share again.
Yes.
See it.
You want me to do it?
No, here it is.
To try? Okay.
No, it doesn't let me share, Bianca.
Okay. So maybe I will do it. So take it. We will try.
It tells me that your screen sharing is paused.
Okay. Yes. So
Can you fix it?
According to my settings, you are screen sharing, so there's nothing that I
Why does it say it is paused?
It says no. In fact, it says that it's you're sharing the screen, green light, and the only thing that I can do is stop participant screen sharing. So maybe I'll do that and allow Samira to screen share.
Okay. Samira?
Yeah, I can do it.
All right.
So I hope that it will not disconnect this time. Okay. the policy of Israel toward the Palestinian textbook, it was since 2017, it was to control and censorship the textbooks. Israel's censorship of Palestinian textbook in East Jerusalem has direct censorship by she doing this in 3 ways, or erasing symbol, or leaving the segment, or deleting the content of the whole pages. And I will show here some example from the textbook. This is one of the textbook in history. This is the flag of a Palestinian state. So when it's come to the pupil in East Jerusalem, Israel is taking censorship. The textbook take the everything related to Palestine or identity of Palestine. The same inside the book. If you see here, we have where I put the line, red line. This means that it's erasing everything symbol of Palestinian nation or Palestinian identity. These textbooks, for example, it was a little bit managed some information about Zionism, about Israel, and what Israel do, read the text, the content of the text, and what is not really fit to the state of Israel, delete it and censorship with white. Or some example like this. This is another textbook which take the flag of the Palestinian flag. This textbook in grade A9, it was a little bit giving background information to the pupil in in Palestine about the Palestinian case. So the student is study something about Palestinian case, about his identity, about his religion, and suddenly when it's come to East Jerusalem or to the pupil, they give him these textbooks to share. It's white pages without any information about his identity, his culture, his national. So the chapter, the whole chapter, it was deleted with white. So this is how the treatment of the state of Israel to the Palestinian textbooks and the content of the textbook. And the reaction, and this is, you see the whole page, it was white. So the reaction of the Palestinian when it was censorship, when it was controlled by the state of Israel, no mention, as Israel said, about Palestine, about Nakba, about the Palestinian as a nation or as people in their textbook. The motivation of the Palestinian to change the textbooks to, and this is the act that it reacts. So it was reaction, the Israeli control and the reaction to the control and the censorship, lack of recognition of the Palestinian narrative. So what they did, they took the textbook and they changed it totally from 2018 until today. The pupil in Palestine studied different textbook, not in Oslo process, not after the ideology of Oslo with it recognition of 1966 border green line. Israel is recognition in the textbook, so they decide to do something in reaction to the Israeli step, which was to change the textbook. The Palestinian education system has decided to change their textbook and to present Israel just as occupier. And no racism in the textbook, also in the new one, but there is a selection of fact. Textbook not including information about Judaism as the formal one, and religion and Jewish as a religion community. They didn't mention anything. No maps include Israel as a state in Palestinian textbooks. There was no representation of the subject of the Holocaust in the textbook of the Palestinian Authority, not in the old textbook and not in the new textbooks. The Zionism occupation created the Palestinian refugees. In the former textbooks, they didn't even mention the refugees, just a little bit, and they didn't say that it's direct cause from Israel. And in this textbook, they said it's a create by Israel, a settler colonial state as a European colonial on the land of Palestine. The new textbook show the cover. You can see this is the old textbook. This is the new textbook. The new textbook has a kafiyah, the symbol, the flag, the Palestinian flag, and the symbol of Palestine. And the color, the whole color is Palestinian flag. All the textbook in grade 11, in grade 10, showing cities in Palestine, showing how much important is Al-Aqsa and the Aqsa Mosque and the land of Palestine, since the north and the whole Palestinian land, the city of Palestine. You can see also here, this is for grade 3, this is for grade 4, the same color, the kafiyah and the flag, and the pupil is raising the Palestinian flag in the school, in the garden, in the land. Every single page or every two single, you see a Palestinian flag and the Palestinian National Authority showing this very strong to the pupil. You can see also this is another book in grade 12, sorry, and this is in geography, this is 11. See, the whole colors are the same, the whole Palestinian. This is the reaction. Okay, you ignore us, so we'll do the same. And you see here also very strange thing, which is showing not to recognize the green line. This is Jerusalem city, and I'm sorry, this is in Hebrew, but this is Hebron city. This means that they put Hebron here, and Jerusalem all is a Palestinian city. You can see here city of Jaffa, for example, and city of Nablus is in the same box. This means the whole cities is in Palestine, or this is cities of a Palestinian historic. So no mention for Israel, refugees, the Palestinian and their transformation into refugees. This is because Israel caused that. And also, if you see this photo in the new textbook showing the colonial settlement, how occupied Palestine, and Palestine was really huge land, and now you can have, you can see that it's a small place for Palestinian, and the other is a settlement, occupied Palestine. You can see here the old textbooks since 2017 are censored either by third-party donor or by Israeli government. No images was in the old textbook of racism in Palestinian textbook toward Israel or the Israeli right to exist. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is present not as a religion conflict, but it was against the Zionism movement and ideology, which does not recognize the right of the Palestinian people to their land, their access as a nation, does not including any information against Judaism as a religion or a religion community. There is no stereotype images of Jews in textbook in positive or negative. But when they change the textbook, Israel does not appear in the books. There is no place for the history of the Jew, the Jewish. The map do not show the border of 1967, but they show all cities in historical Palestine. The Zionism occupation appear in most books. And this is only a thing mentioned about the Jews. The colonial settlement is mentioned, such as apartheid, racism. It's directly to the state of Israel. And this is what they tried, and this is how they changed from the old textbook, as you see here, I mentioned before. The question, when I asked why the Palestinian National Authority did that, one of the responsible answered me, the question that should be asked is why the Jewish European Holocaust should be mentioned when our Nakba caused by Israel is not mentioned in Israeli textbooks. This means everything is reaction. To use the textbook is to reaction to something happened in Israel. Israel is not mentioned our Nakba, so we will not mention their Holocaust. Therefore, as long as they do not mention our Nakba, we will not mention their Holocaust. This is how they use the textbook. Why the PA issue textbook, they still do not have the power within the context of occupation, including the power over narrative. This means when they write the textbook, they told me, and this is true, they're still under occupation, and they write textbook when they leave the occupation and have it as a life. The BA is not ready and cannot be ready under occupation to accept the Israeli narrative, and this is why they start not to accept it and to do it. In my point of view, controlling the education curricula and textbook content is an instrument of a great power. Control serve the education authority in order to shape identity inside the group in question. So, and in this case, I saw that both sides should include all relevant historical facts, be in the Holocaust or in Nakba, and live to the student to develop their own narrative and to choose the thing that he believes in. This is the key in developing critical thinking to the student. Unfortunately, the situation is not like this. You see what before, or you hear Nurit before, how the Israeli textbook mentioned the Palestinians, even the Palestinian inside Israel, they have the citizenship. They didn't even mention the name Palestinian. They mentioned also the Arab, not the Arab of the Arab Israeli or Israeli Arab. They never mentioned Palestinians. And the same in the West Bank and Gaza, where they decide to change their own textbook in 2018. They decide to do it as a reaction of many things happen in the state of Israel or in Palestine. It's like also in 2018, if you remember, Trump was here and he, the recognition that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, and then they deleted anything, mentioned anything about Palestinians everywhere. And when in the same time, the Palestinian there, they were even teach the student about the history of the Jews in Palestine, and they mentioned in the map Israeli state. So the action was tough, in my opinion. The action was half a narrative, not recognition and not recognize the state of Israel, which is bad because Israel is here and we are living together, and we have to show the people that Israel exists. And this is the reaction to use like what Israel do. I think is not as somebody believe in education is not true. Thank you. I'm happy that it was not good. Thank you.
Thank you, Samira. Thank you so much for persisting as well, despite the difficulties with internet and technology. Really appreciate your presentation. Really important details and quite disturbing information around the content and changes in textbooks, the ahistoricism and censorship and racism, as well as reactivity. And I feel like we're all very fortunate to have all this information to better understand the role of education. And I invite you to follow Samira's work around the power of education in Israel and in Palestine. I look forward to hearing more from you in the Q&A. So our final speaker of today's event is Kathleen Copps. Kathleen, or Kathy, is retired from a 35-year teaching career in British Columbia. Her support for Palestinian rights goes back to her student days in the early 1970s. In 2012, she was part of a delegation to Gaza to listen to and connect with Palestinians silenced in Canadian and Western media. She's been a member of the Seriously Free Speech Committee and a coordinator of the Free Omar Khadr Now campaign. She's a member of BDS Vancouver Coast Salish Territories, and this past week took part in the #NoIHRA in Vancouver effort. Welcome, Kathy.
Thank you so much, Bianca. Excuse me, and thank you so much as well to the other panelists for their powerful presentations. I'm here today on the ancestral unceded territory of the Coast Salish people in Vancouver. The parallels between the anti-colonial, anti-apartheid struggle of Indigenous people on this land and in Palestine are clear. Both Canada and Israel are partners in a settler colonial contract, which has silenced the voices of their occupied people. I'm very honored to be part of this important discussion. The fact that we are here talking about the silencing of Palestine in our educational institutions is a step forward, and even more crucial since the passing of the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism will likely intensify Zionist efforts to delegitimize and suppress discourse. For those of you who are outside Canada, you may wonder why Canada would be suppressing Palestinian voices. And I think I can explain that Canada has always been a major supporter of Israel. And our politicians kind of trip over themselves, showing that with sentences like, Israel, we have your back. And our institutions, media, they promote the Zionist propaganda or narrative at least. So for too long, Palestine has been a largely taboo subject in Canada's educational system. So I'm going to discuss the situation here in Vancouver, but I don't think it's unique to the rest of the country. And Michelle has provided you with some background about how that is and why. Suppression of Palestinian voices has serious consequences for all students. I'd venture to say that only a small percentage of students in Canada graduate from high school with even a minimal awareness of Palestine. More likely, the subject was never introduced or given more than a cursory mention from a textbook. As a result, teachers are unlikely to have heard reference to the topic during their years of study. Although they may be interested in introducing a topic so relevant to world events, teachers are intimidated and confused by what is generally framed as, oh, it's too complex to understand, and what about Hamas? And it's a religious issue, or both sides are to blame, and what about Hamas? Always about Hamas. Israel has to defend itself. So that's particularly if they've been listening to Canadian media or Canadian politicians. So it's easy to see why they stay clear of the topic. Teachers self-censor. No one has to tell them to avoid venturing into that content area. If they do, they may be exposed to a very negative reaction from colleagues expressing discomfort that students will be engaged in a unit or even a single lesson on Palestine. And they may fear consequences if Palestine is added to their curriculum and a student or parent complains about anti-Semitic discourse in the class. So that's the most effective component of this silencing. The most inevitable, almost inevitable pro-Zionist backlash, where they rally administrators and school boards with threats and intimidation, and the ever-present and horrifying threat of being called an anti-Semite. They know they're not just going to be called into the principal's office. As we've seen in Ontario, in the case of Nadia Shufani and Havid Avila, intimidation, investigations, legal threats, court cases, and even job loss may result. But there are teachers who do take it on. I don't want to diminish their work. Hannah Hawass, chair of the Canada-Palestine Association in the past, has been invited into classrooms to provide students with personal and historical background in Palestine. And the University of the Fraser Valley has a focus on Palestine for several years. So these are definitely and unfortunately exceptions. The BC Teachers Federation has a history of conflict over Palestine between the executive and a very few committed rank and file teachers and individuals. Over the years, there's been conflict, emotions from locals to the AGM, which never get to the floor. For example, in 2006, a resolution came forth from the membership calling on the Canadian government to support the International Court of Justice decision regarding Israel's apartheid wall. But due to successful attempts by the executive to derail the process, the motion never made it to the floor. There have been, however, some individual executive members who have taken a more progressive direction on Palestine. In 2016, for example, a BCTF Social Justice Committee put a lot of work into a unit for grade 10 to 12. It was called the Israel-Palestine Conflict, Searching for a Just Peace. It was very extensive, a huge step forward, but once again, most likely too overwhelming for any teacher to take on, especially considering the risks involved. For many Canadians, recent developments in Canada's reconciliation process have resulted in an appreciation of Canada's origin and history as a white settler project, which provides a framework for understanding our racist, genocidal treatment of our Indigenous people. This awakening is profound and inspires teachers and others to reframe the Israel-Palestine conflict through the same lens. Israel as a settler colonial enterprise, annexing Indigenous land, subjugating the native population, and instituting genocidal policies. The recently elected Vancouver School Board and other boards throughout the country will likely be pressured to adopt the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, as Michelle was explaining. This is an attempt to cast an even darker shadow over any discourse about Palestine in our schools. But on a positive note, the growing politicization of teachers and their awareness of Palestine in the global anti-colonial struggle is bound to move the conversation forward. Now a bit about silencing of Palestine at the University of British Columbia and Simon Fraser University. Silencing of Palestine at UBC goes back at least as far as the early 90s, when Dr. Adel Safdie was denied tenure and promotion after pro-Zionist profs complained about his so-called Palestinian perspective as a media analyst during the first Gulf War. In that era, there wasn't a student group like Students for Palestinian Human Rights, SPHR, who could rally support. The growth of student organizations in support of Palestinian rights and free speech on campus has resulted in a sea change in Canadian universities, and I think in America as well. These groups and individuals, through Anti-Apartheid Week and successful BDS campaigns, have transformed university discourse on Palestine, but of course, they've caused paroxysms of Zionist backlash. With the well-funded hypervigilance of Hillel groups on campus, this is a well-funded group of students. There's Hillel houses, I think, throughout most Western universities, and they help to disseminate to protect the Zionist narrative on campus. So not much on campus escapes Zionist scrutiny and reaction. For example, last December at the University of British Columbia, a film about Georges Abdallah, one of the heroes of the Palestinian resistance, was going to be shown, but it was postponed by the university admin following a complaint from an external organization. They said that they were going to do a risk assessment for security reasons, and a year later, there's been no results to that process. The film is still being postponed until further notice, although it's been shown in many other venues throughout the city and province. Last February, it was made known that in 2018, 6 members of the UBC community were the subjects of an investigation based on allegations that they had engaged in anti-Semitic behavior. Why? because in an email chain about the geography department year-end party, several professors and students expressed opposition to renting a venue from Halal House because of its unqualified support of Israel. So the organizers chose another venue. The local chapter of CIJA, the Center for Israel and Jewish Advocacy, got wind of this email chain, and they set up a website, launched a letter writing campaign to the UBC administration alleging blatant anti-Semitism and demanded action. A UBC geography student, a member of Halal, filed a complaint against those who opposed having a party at Halal on the grounds it constituted discrimination, harassment, and anti-Semitism. That email discussion became the subject of a 6-month legal investigation, a 52-page report, and an outside investigator finding there had been no expression of anti-Semitism. And all of this over the decision not to hold their year-end party at Halal House. But despite the repression, motions in favor of Palestinian human rights are sweeping across North American campuses, thanks to the tireless advocacy of groups like UBC Students for Palestinian Human Rights and Students for Justice in Palestine at Simon Fraser University. Last March, UBC's Alma Mater Society passed a motion demanding the university divest from companies involved in or complicit in human rights violations against Palestinians. And in April, Simon Fraser University Student Council unanimously passed a resolution committing to BDS in support of Palestinian liberation. Shortly after, a 3-day event called Palestine Days, telling the stories of Palestine, was held, featuring films, speakers, and workshops. And that was probably a first for Simon Fraser University and likely for other campuses across Canada. In the last year, there have been 5 BDS victories on Canadian campuses. These are very impressive victories and reveal a growing solidarity for Palestine from progressive student organizations and their allies. So I think that the Zionist forces are obviously desperate to get the IHRA adopted quickly so that they can try and hold back this tide. But the students and their allies, I think, have realized their voices and power, and they can no longer be silenced. And that's where I am for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kathleen. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. So thoughtful. Thank you for shedding light on the attack that we're seeing on Palestine through education in Canada specifically, as well as the growing solidarity on campuses. And thank you for your activism and commitment to public education. That's very clear. And also really important to make those connections between settler colonialism here in Canada.
Oh,
Yes.
sorry, Bianca, I just wanted to, I think Michelle mentioned a great resource that I would like to highlight to make sure people are interested in this topic, especially, you know, it's particularly about Canada, put together by IJV, unveiling the chilly climate, the suppression of speech in Palestine, on Palestine in Canada, and also the one the Canadian, Arab Canadian lawyers have put together. I think Karen has already put that onto the chat, but it's an incredible resource. Anti-Palestinian racism in Canada, naming, framing, manifestations. Also, Just Peace advocates have put together a legal resource package for Palestinian human rights supporters in Canada, which is really valuable and necessary to understand if you're going to be involved in any kind of activism on this subject.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Michelle. And I see that Karen has put those important links in the chat. Please do check those out. I'd like to thank you. It's great to see all the panelists back. We are now through with the first portion of the afternoon / evening / morning, wherever you are. And we do have quite a few questions. We don't have too much time. We're already kind of at the end of our allotted time, but I am gonna I am going to take some questions because I do see that there's still quite a few of us at home. It's been so great to see so many people on this call. More than 100 people turned up for this conversation, which I think is very encouraging given how important it is. So the first question that we have is from Malik, who wants to know whether there's a movement within Israel to adjust the education and textbooks of Israeli children to more accurately reflect the facts without bias, or whether this education goes unchallenged. So maybe I'll start with Samira and Nurit. Do either of you have any insight into whether or not there is any pushback around this?
No, there's no movement. There are nice small initiatives. One of them is called Political Teacher. And I think in some private schools, like the bilingual school, where Arab and Jewish children study together, they have other programs altogether. But there's no, movement of teachers or researchers. On the contrary, it's getting worse and worse. As I told you, the books that come out in the last years don't even mention the 20% of Palestinian citizens. They don't exist. They don't exist in Israeli consciousness. They don't exist in Israeli culture. They don't exist in Israeli society, and they don't exist in school books. They're just not there. When people say Israeli literature, they would never mention Emil Habibi, for example, okay? Or when they say Israeli science, they never mention Palestinian Israeli scientists. They are erased. And the teachers are, even if they're critical, I mean, if they're too critical, they lose their jobs. But if they're critical, it's very hard. It's very hard. And there's no movement. No, here and there are people who do something, but there's no movement.
Just to add to Nurit, that is not just, there is no movement. Also, it's coming worse that the teacher is afraid to act, in both sides, Palestinian side and Israeli side, because it's coming worse and worse to control the movement of the teacher. So if they want to do anything as a movement between Palestinian and Israeli, it should be like not reality, not to talk about the conflict and to talk about peace and to talk about food and to talk is not. So this active is not really moving, and it's coming worse and worse, as I mentioned in my presentation, that the reaction of the Palestinian become worse than it's coming better. It's ignoring Israel instead to do something in act, although they are in occupation, but it's still no recognition between each side.
Thank you, Nurit and Samira. The next question that we have is from Judith, who wants to know if people can comment on Avi Mograbi's insightful film about the teaching of the Samson and Masada suicide terrorism myths to Israeli children from an early childhood through late adolescence, idealizing suicide terrorism while no acknowledgement that they are the aggressors is her question. Would anyone care to comment?
The myth of Masada was created by Zionism in order to create a myths of heroism against the weak and passive Jews of diaspora who went like sheep to the slaughter. Okay, not only in the Holocaust, the pogroms that were before the Holocaust. So they invented this myth, which is dissipated today and refuted completely. But it's one of the things. It's one in a line of such myths. You have the myth of Tel Chai. You have the myth of all kinds of myths from the Bible that have the same message. Okay, we used to be heroic. We used to be fighters. Then for 2,000 years, something went wrong, and now we are the direct successors of these very brave people. And we forgot about the Jews 2,000 years of diaspora. The attitude towards diaspora Jews is very contemptuous. We don't learn anything about them. The school books don't have anything about them. As one historian said, we know a lot about the extermination, but we don't know anything about the exterminated. They are not important. Everything that was, during these 2,000 years doesn't exist, neither in Palestine nor in Europe, in Jewish Europe. Okay, so they had to create these myths of heroism, which Masada is not heroism, it was craziness. But that's what they did, and every year they take the time of Bar Mitzvah, they take the children to climb the Masada and swear all kinds of things. Yes, this is it.
Thank you. We have a question from Mariam, who's directing her question to Samira. How should Palestinian people deal with this kind of censorship to teach the truth? I know strikes have been happening, but they can't go on indefinitely. How can we react? Asks Mariam.
It's very important to answer, Miriam, that the censorship is to the textbook in East Jerusalem. It's a direct censorship, which the teacher and the school can't do anything, because this is the school and the teacher and the whole system is controlled by the state of Israel, because it's located in East Jerusalem, and Israel has the right to look through that textbook when they enter to Jerusalem, and then they don't have the right, but they do it to censor the textbooks. And how they deal with this, very, very passive way. The teacher is teach the books. Sometimes they didn't even talk about the censorship in the school. Sometimes teachers, they didn't want to even to mention this. So if Miriam go through my lecture and I show the white pages, it's a whole chapter. When the teacher start page number 55, so he told the student immediately go through the from 55 to page 60 or 62. So they didn't mention anything. And the reason is, to answer Miriam and other, that teachers afraid to talk about what's happened and what happened and why it's like this. So if they mention this, as Nurit mentioned before, they're afraid to lose their job because it's a political issue. And the reaction of the Palestinian National Authority was, okay, if you censorship our textbooks to the pupil and they didn't study anything about their identity, so we'll change it. And now it's very more difficult for the censorship to censor every single page and to delete the flag from the Palestinian new textbooks. So there is no reaction, actually. There is frighten and silence.
Thank you. Jerry has a question for Michelle. Jerry says, I'm in BC. What can we do to prevent IHRA adoption? Should we focus on the BC Teachers Federation rejecting the definition, or should we petition individual school boards? Michelle? Oh, you're still muted, Michelle.
I think you should try everything. All parties should be pursued, and all paths should be pursued. The question is, how do you get the point across, and how do you actually instill the confidence in people to be able to stand up against the possible onslaught of criticism and fear-mongering that you're going to get? I think that one-on-one conversations are useful, but also it's very easy to get caught up in the weeds of the IHRA definition, so that you get sidetracked. And you start debating the minutiae of the definition and its examples. And this gets you into the weeds or down a rabbit hole. And I think it's very important to know how to avoid that and to explain how the definition and its examples work in a manipulative way And in that sense, you're actually not talking about anti-Semitism. You're talking about how there's an ideological manipulation of people's minds. And that gets you onto other turf where you're not actually being, you're not risking saying something which is so-called anti-Semitic, but you're simply discussing how these things function in terms of changing people's minds. The other thing I think it's important to underline for anybody who's looking at these definitions is to remember that the word Holocaust, which was not originally in the definition, I think it was put into the title much later on, has an incredible power to disarm people by way of association. So we know that this political and historic event of great horror actually creates enormous both reverence and awe and respect, pretty universally, minus those people who want to deny the Holocaust. But it stands as a kind of credential that anything that's associated with it must necessarily follow suit with the same kind of legitimacy. Whereas in fact, this definition is in contradiction with itself. Its title does not match the substance of the definition itself or the examples that are given to it. And I think these kinds of things have to be explained so that one understands how the definition works to persuade in a very pernicious way. But the last thing I just like to say is that one of the most powerful ways of turning the table around is to talk about anti-Palestinian racism and the horrors that are happening to Palestinians themselves, because they keep telling us, please keep talking about Palestine. Please don't forget us. Please don't silence us. So one of the most powerful and effective ways is to get the discussion onto another ground, the ground of talking about Palestine and not anti-Semitism. I hope that's of use.
I'd like to add that there's another definition, a counter definition drafted by Holocaust historians, headed by Amos Goldberg, that can be used.
And could you just give a little bit more information about how people can get that? Just Google.
Yes, I think if you Google Professor Amos Goldberg or, alternative definition, it came right after. And it's a very serious one.
Oh, sorry. Is that the Jerusalem definition? I think that's the one. It's
Maybe,
referred
yes.
to the Jerusalem definition. So maybe if you Google that,
Yes.
you'll come up with an alternative definition that I think is much more acceptable.
We had a question submitted in advance on the subject of definitions. Is there a definition of anti-Palestinian racism? Is the question, and how do we ensure that anti-Palestinian racism is recognized and addressed in the education system across Canada? Perhaps I can start with Kathleen and Michelle again.
I think before you can get into a discussion about anti-Palestinian racism, you have to be able to help students understand who Palestinians are and why they're racism against them, and what is the relationship between Israel and Palestine. Part of the racism is silent, not even the silent, but their existence. The Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, excuse me, sorry about that. You can't even mention Palestine in the media. The word that they don't exist, and I think Nurit was explaining that, and Michelle as well. So it's an important issue, but we have to really start at the groundwork. And I think the previous question about what we can do to organize against the IHRA definition is begin just even talking about Palestine. Teachers talking about Palestine and the fact that it exists is a major step forward. Michelle, would you like to take it from there?
Well, the definition that I think Karen has posted, according to the Canadian Arab Lawyers Foundation, gives a whole series of categories that can be fleshed out. Silencing, exclusion, erasure, stereotypes, defamation, dehumanization, denying the Nakba, all sorts of slurs, failing to acknowledge Palestinians as an indigenous people with the collective identity, belonging and rights in relation to historic Palestine and so forth. These are all categories that can be used almost in a curriculum to show in total how we have anti-Palestinian racism that is so blatant, so obvious, that it's almost not difficult to justify, not difficult to illustrate. One of the things that I always find very persuasive is when we take children and see how they're being treated. We hear a lot about the unsafety, quote unquote, of Jewish children or Jewish students in Ontario schools. This is the claim. And I'm never quite sure what they mean by unsafety. I don't know what incidents are being identified, but they're spoken about in abstraction as incidents of anti-Semitism. And the minute that you use the word anti-Semitism, then that's it, everybody assumes it was very grave. If we contrast that, or maybe I should say juxtapose it with the fate of Palestinian children today in detention, how they're arrested, how they're brutalized, how they're interrogated, that they are killed in cold blood on a regular basis. I think that is an icon of anti-Palestinian racism in a nutshell. And we can go from there. We can ask ourselves, why is it that these children are being targeted? Why is it that, and in a whole village, all the parents and all the communities associated with that child, and the kind of extensive impact that such an assault actually constitutes. When we look at that, it basically represents a crucible, a huge amount of material to talk about when it concerns anti-Palestinian racism. And we can go from there, but there's no dearth. There's no dearth of material to discuss.
Thank you, Michelle. So I'm just going to take two more questions and maybe some brief responses, as we really are over time. But the second last question is how does a settler colonial narrative in Canadian textbooks and education have similarities to what is seen in regards to the narrative in Israeli textbooks? Is there anyone that has thoughts on that?
Michelle, I have something
You start and I'll go after.
brief to say about that. Okay. I don't think there, excuse me, I'm sorry about my throat. I don't think that there is much reference, that there are many references to is it Palestine that you were mentioning in the Canadian textbooks. The last time I looked at a grade 12 history textbook, I think there was one paragraph on the topic. So once again, that are complicit in erasing the don't really ever hear about the conflict, what we're discussing today. The idea is just to not talk about it in the schools. And the textbooks, I don't think that there are many textbooks that cover it with any real depth.
Thank you,
I
Kathleen.
think you should talk about your own settler colonialism.
Yes, that's just
What about
beginning too.
Palestine?
I agree. Mm-hmm.
Canada is a settler colonial state, and I think the way that First Nations were treated and are treated is very similar.
Yes,
And
Nurit,
I gave a course
agree.
in Manitoba University once, and to Palestinian and Canadian teachers. And during the break, the Canadian teacher brought their own school books, and they started to study them to see what happens there. And that's the best thing you can do. I mean, really study your own history.
Yeah, but that's what teachers are just awakening to now with the whole reconciliation process. Canada just opening up to the fact that and admitting that we're a settler colonial state. So, I mean, there are huge parallels between the two. And I think as teachers become more aware, then they are more confident about how to frame the whole the comparison between our own colonial state and Israel.
Michelle, did you have thoughts as well?
I have thoughts, but I don't have the same experience in actually identifying any Palestinian content in Canadian textbooks of history or not finding them. But I do have a brief anecdote to share, and that is when I came to Canada, I remember in history courses from grade 7 to maybe grade 10, most of the history curriculum consisted in studying the explorers of the West and basically the search for the Northwest Passage. And I can say that in 4 years, I don't recall that we ever found the Northwest Passage. Today, after 4 years, it just seemed as if that was just a futile quest. But there was no indication of what was going on to the native population. It was fairly backward. Today, having tutored certain students from a private school, I was asked to do some work on the Akkadian expulsion. And looking at the material there, I saw very strong parallels with the Nakba, as if there are certain features about ethnic cleansing that can in fact be reproduced again and again in almost a paradigmatic form, that you can identify the formula that is used in ethnic cleansing. And I thought it was interesting that that was the first time, probably in a long time, that this part of Canadian history was being actually explored and taught. It might be the chink in the armor. It might be the crack in the wall that allows people to see things as they are and as they were, rather than in this very sanitized representation of Canada as being this peaceable kingdom, which it was not, or is not, in fact.
Thank you.
But, yeah, that's about all.
So the final question is about the UNRWA. What would you suggest are responses that civil society can take when Israel criticizes Palestinian education in its bid to stop Canada from funding the UNRWA? I'd love to hear from you first, Nurit.
The criticism or the slandering that against Palestinian education comes from an organization called Impact. And they work all over the world, and they're supported lavishly by everybody: UNESCO, American Congress, European Parliament. They pretend to be an academic organization. They are not. And their so-called researchers are not real researchers. They never bring any real examples to anything. And I think you have to fight this slandering with facts. I mean, Palestinian school books, because they are supported and financed by so many organizations, are usually translated to English, and you can find them on the internet. And you can really, I mean, you have to confront these people with facts and with examples and with quotes. And as Samira said, they work under occupation and such a heavy censorship and control and monitoring that even if they wanted to incite against Israel, they couldn't. So this is what you have to do. And I know everybody buys this slandering, starting with Hillary Clinton and the European Parliament and all of Europe and the United States and so on, without ever looking at those books. So really confront them with information, with real good information. And nobody controls Israeli school books. Nobody even talks about Israeli school books.
Samira, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as we close out. No, you're still muted.
Yes, thank you. I agree with every single word what Nurit said. I will add that also just if you go after the report that Impact published against the Palestinian textbooks, it show also the confusion between which kind of a group, because when I read the report to react sometimes to the Impact, they mix between Palestinian Israelis and Palestinian in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. They even didn't know the difference between all the three groups. And since the beginning, they are coming to criticize the textbooks, and the world believe them. Even sometimes many of my students, they bring this as a reference to use it in paper which the people there, they are all, most of them, they not Arab, they don't speak. Analysis textbook, you have to know the language and not translate the language. And mostly they go through every single book and write criticism since the beginning before. So yes, I think many criticize on the textbook in the world is not really correct, because people believe this organization or foundation, and they didn't go to the really people do academia, because not just me, many people also analyze. So this is there is nothing to do, just the European have to know more. And I agree with Catherine when she said that people should learn about Palestine and to know about Palestine, and not to know who are they before they know if they are terrorists or they have or something else. Who is the Palestinians? People didn't know. So we have to do this more often and every day, I think, to show a student who is a Palestinian and to teach him. Yeah.
Thank you, Samira, for those wise words. I think that's a wonderful note on which to end our discussion. I want to thank you all so very much. This was an important discussion to have, a critical one, hopefully the first of many, because it's very important ground that is not well covered. So please do consider sending a recording of this event and the ACLA anti-racism report to your local school board administrators and trustees as an action that you can take coming out of this webinar. As I mentioned earlier, we are rebroadcasting this discussion to both YouTube and Facebook. Everyone who's registered will get a copy of that recording, as well as the useful links that were put in the chat. So no worries if you haven't saved them. Subscribe to the Canadian Foreign Policy Institute's YouTube channel, and you'll get immediate notifications as well. Also, if you like discussions like these, please do consider donating to the Canadian Foreign Policy Institute. We are completely reliant on people like you to keep going and educating around these critical topics. So it has been an excellent event. Thank you so much to our panelists, Michelle, Samira, Nurit, and Kathy. Brilliant presentations and discussion. Please do find out more about their work and their writing. I also want to thank our audience, our wonderful audience who are so engaged and had such great comments and questions. Let's continue working for peace, opposing war and occupation. That's it for our event. Goodbye, everyone, and peace.